Hi, I'm Trisha Terinskis, host of the Vault podcast.
And I'm Jeremy Fugelberg, author of the investigative series Minnesota Vice. In that series, I took a deep dive into the true story of Casey Ramirez, a drug smuggler who tried to hide out and live it up in a small Minnesota town. What happened next led me to find out what happens to the soul of a town when it decides not to ask too many questions.
It was such a well-researched and interesting story. I wanted to bring Jeremy on to the Vault to talk about it. You can find that right now by going to the Vault podcast, wherever you listen, and looking for the episode titled The Cocaine King.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinsler, a lifelong gardener and the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Just returned from vacation.
Yeah, you had a couple weeks off.
We did, yeah. My wife and two sons and I took a road trip.
Where'd you go?
East.
Okay.
Yep. Stopped at Western New York State.
Okay.
Franklin Roosevelt Presidential Library. That was awesome.
Hyde Park?
Yep, Hyde Park. You got it. And the Vanderbilts had one of their mansions, one of their many mansions there. This was one that they spent a couple of weeks in the spring, couple of weeks in the fall when the weather was just perfect there. They spent a couple of weeks there. You know, it was one of their, they called it one of their more conservative dwellings. It only had 35 rooms.
Okay. Modest.
Modest, yeah. It was beautiful, and the grounds were really nice. And then on to Cape Cod.
Okay.
Martha's Vineyard. Martha's Vineyard had a nice tour. That actually has more not undeveloped, more agricultural land. You know, you think of Martha's Vineyard where the rich and famous go to, you know, spend some time on the ocean or beach. But that actually has a fair amount of agricultural land on that island, which is awesome. Then took a commuter rail up to Boston, saw some of the historic sites there. And so we had a really good time.
You must have been able to see lots of great gardens.
Oh, we did. Yes. In fact, the presidential Franklin Roosevelt Presidential Library, his home, his ancestral home was also right there on that same grounds, and they have a very nice rose garden. Of course, the roses weren't at their peak, probably at their peak in June, but still really, really nice. And there were annual flowers there, and that's where he and Eleanor Roosevelt are buried in that rose garden. There's a very nice granite tomb. And so, yeah, it was fun to see that. And it was surrounded by a beautiful evergreen hemlock hedge.
Oh,
you know, Mary said, man, we need to develop, I mean, not that we're going to be buried in our backyard like they were, but it would be fun to have a section of an evergreen hedge. And of course, that type of hemlock isn't winter hardy here, but Techni arborvitae.
Yep.
Or some of the upright junipers. Yeah, so we're going to do that. And also the Vanderbilts, of course, they had a very nice Italian-themed garden.
Okay. And
they have wonderful formal hedges. Their hedge was privet. Sometimes you see that advertised in, mail-order catalogs and things from out east, down south. Privet is kind of the traditional trimmed hedge. Privet doesn't grow well here.
Right.
And Mary said, gosh, it'd be kind of fun to have a section of that somewhere in our yard. But our answer to that is cotoneaster.
Okay.
Cotoneaster has a similar shaped leaf as privet, wonderfully hardy here, and you can shear that just the same. So it's interesting. And of course, there were some wonderful flowering shrubs. Oh, we noticed the hydrangeas.
I was going to say hydrangeas are very big, especially up on
really big.
Yeah,
and out in those areas, Martha's Vineyard, Cape Cod, all areas, Boston. And they grow the Annabelle types like we do. They grow the panicle types like we do with the pyramidal cone-shaped flowers. We grow beautiful. They grow just as beautifully here as they do there. But they also have the kind of the endless summer type, which are the blue blossomed ones and the kind of lavender and pink flowered ones. And those look nice. They were very beautiful. So that's one difference. They just don't do as well here. You know, there's a reason up and down the streets in our area, you do not see blue hydrangeas, the deep rose colored hydrangeas. The purple ones, they just don't like our soil that well. But, I feel I can live without those because one thing I really noticed, even though the gardens we visited were beautiful, they cannot grow grass worth a darn.
Really?
even at the Vanderbilt mansion, which was lushly cared for, and of course out on Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, some of the beautiful estates, the soil is very sandy.
Oh,
very sandy in those areas, and sometimes no matter how they water, they can't grow grass the way we do. And so when we returned, especially after the generous rainfall we've had in the area, our lawn looks much better than the Vanderbilts.
Take that.
It's great to be home. And, like I've always said, there's no place I'd rather be gardening. Yeah, they've got some things they can grow that maybe we can't, but we've got some things that we grow that they can't either in some of the warmer areas.
So how has it been to come back after 2 weeks? Because we have had a fair amount of rain and it was warmish, what have you seen? What have you seen the changes in your garden?
Well, it was nice. Our daughter and son-in-law, of course, kept the planters watered and things such as that, and they mowed our lawn once. But it was fun to come back, and the tomatoes are in full force ripening. The melons were about ready. And we've noticed, because 2 weeks, things change greatly. And so it was fun to see the flower gardens became at their peak and still at their peak. Mm-hmm. And so it's fun to see the changes, especially in the vegetable garden. You see things kind of tending towards the fall harvest a bit. So we greatly noticed that.
And we're going to talk about some of these things. We transitioning to fall. We're going to talk about some of the things to do right around Labor Day weekend. But one of the things I noticed this year is it just me? Am I being impatient? Or
What's that?
The tomatoes aren't. Are tomatoes usually by this time ready to go? Is it our yard or us as gardeners? Our tomatoes are still kind of developing. They're growing, but they haven't started turning red yet, really.
Well, I was thinking that, but I didn't say it. When we returned, I thought the tomatoes would have been more advanced, that they would have been loaded. But, we had kind of a yo-yo weather.
It's been cool
this growing season. It's been cool. We've had some warmth, but it's been interspersed with some pretty cool temperatures.
Yeah.
And tomatoes and other warm-loving things would like consistent warmth, especially at night. And so I've noticed that also. Because typically this time of year, we'd be looking at getting ready to can.
Yeah.
And so right now, we don't have enough tomatoes, even though we planted about 36 or 40 tomato plants. We don't have enough accumulated right now to can yet. I'm sure it'll happen.
Yeah.
But yo-yo temperatures is what I call it this year.
So we're talking here at the end of August, these kind of cooler nights that we've had. Is that going to still keep tomatoes slowing down a little bit, the process of them?
A lot. Two factors. One will be, of course, the daytime temperatures, but also tomatoes and other heat-loving things, they can sense the night temperatures, and if it gets too chilly at night, then they do tend to slow down. So I think things are going to be okay. It's interesting. You can't have it all.
No.
Some things love the cooler temperatures. Our lawns, they enjoy not having it so hot.
Yep.
Melons and tomatoes, not so much. So, it's difficult. We planted a crop of peas shortly before we left. They've loved the slightly cooler temperatures, the clear sunny days, a little bit of coolness. And so it's difficult to have the summertime temperatures that hit everything. I noticed our cabbage, which tends to like a little cool. Wow, we've got some tremendous cabbage coming on.
Okay.
And we planted a late crop of radishes also. They like it a little cooler, but we just got to get these tomatoes ripened.
Okay, well, we'll talk a little bit about that, but first you have a question from a listener.
Yes, I do.
A letter from a listener.
I do. Yeah, Greg wrote in, and I think we've maybe had a similar question to this, but he wrote in about his hostas, and he sent a photo. And he says, Don, this is happening to almost all of our hostas. What should we do? And it's fairly easy to paint the picture. The hostas are just riddled with little holes. Mm-hmm. And hostas and slugs go together like a hand and a glove.
Yep.
And of course, slugs love the moisture like hostas do. And they kind of like a sheltered protection just like hostas. And so you rarely see them. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a slug nibbling on a hosta because they do their work at night, and I suppose I could go out in the middle of the night with a flashlight and try to catch them in the act. But during the day, then they go down under the leaves, hide in the mulch. One way to tell if hostas, it's obvious when nothing else causes holes like those. But one way you can kind of catch them a little bit is to put a board out, right kind of in the vicinity under the hosta leaves, wet it down good underneath, and then the next morning, check under that board. Slugs will oftentimes attach themselves under that nice wet board, and you can kind of catch them in the act. So what do you do about slugs? The garden centers have slug baits and control, and you can the old-time thing is bury trays of beer, and the slugs will hop on in there.
You bury basically the rim is at ground level, right?
You got it. Yep. And so they'll crawl on in
and fill it with beer, and they're drunk.
Unless they're throwing a party and we'll invite slugs from miles around. That might happen too. And also another one that was shared by, I think I may have mentioned this previous podcast, but a wonderful old gardener shared this recipe with me, and it's household ammonia. Household ammonia, 9 parts of water with 1 part of ammonia. So, like, I'll take just a quart jar, 9 quarts of water to 1 quart of ammonia, and put that in a watering can and douse all around. Ammonia is a fertilizer, and it does not burn the foliage, so you can put it right over and douse good down around. And of course, the kind of the caustic nature of that will affect the slugs, but not the plant. So that plus slug baits that you can buy commercially seem to work quite well. So thanks again, Greg. And anyone else, share your thoughts, your successes, things you're wondering. Donald.Kinzler, KINZLER, at ndsu.edu.
Yeah, I don't want to minimize that, but it seems like hostas. I love them because as a relatively new gardener, they're reliable, they're dependable, they will bounce back.
And so many different colors, blues and yellows,
But it seems like if there's something wrong with the hosta, it's come down to two issues. One is slugs, and the other one is that it's in the wrong place and it's getting too much sun.
Yep, exactly.
Sun scald or
and I see a little bit of that on Greg's photo. There's a little bit of burning on the leaves. So I'm thinking that maybe he's getting a little more sun than it would prefer also.
Well, all right. Well, let's talk about with Labor Day coming up. What are some of the things that we should be doing here? Kind of, I don't want to say the end of summer because summer extends into September, but Labor Day is kind of as a holiday. It's a 3-day weekend. What are some things that we should be doing to maybe mark kind of the beginning of a transition?
Yeah, busy time of year, and yeah, you got it, John. It is a transition, and now I don't look at it as preparing for the end. I don't look at it as that. Gardening isn't a circle where you circle back each year to the same point. Instead, it's like an upward spiral. So the things that we do now, Labor Day, it's not just getting ready to close up shop for the winter. We're not winterizing our lake cabin or something like that. But what we're doing now is preparing things for next year, and it'll be an onward and upward spiral. So let me describe what I mean. Okay, let's talk about lawns. Okay, Labor Day, or early September, is the most important time of year to fertilize your lawn. You might think, well, gosh, they're pretty nice and green growing now. Do we really need to do that? But lawns this time of year are producing the most root growth that they do any time of the growing season. And also they're filling out sideways. Lawns love the shortening days, the cooler weather, a little more moisture. And to do those things, the deep rooting and the sideways kind of tillering out and filling in, they need nutrition. And so that's why fertilizing Labor Day is so important. And it's not just about making that lawn look nice now, but the energy that we put into those grass plants, that will come forth next spring. So see what I mean? It's an onward and upward spiral. The health of our lawn next year and the following years depends on what we do now. Giving it that nutrition will make the lawn healthier, and energize it for years to come. Now, I learned this the hard way. A couple of years ago, I knew you're supposed to do a fertilizer around Labor Day, so I did. Okay, I ran out of fertilizer, a couple of strips left. I thought, oh man, okay, I'm not going to go buy a whole new bag just for a couple of strips. Okay, well, the next spring I could see, and I've got the photos to prove it, I could see where I did not fertilize was a lighter green, but okay, it wasn't just about color. It did not green up as nice in the spring, and it did not look as nice that entire, even though I fertilized again in May, it did not look as nice. And it was kind of embarrassing. It's like, oh, what did you do to those couple of strips?
Right.
And so again, what we do this time of year is going to affect the following years. So very important, fertilized lawns. Okay, another thing in lawns is the weed control. The fall here, September and October, are the best time of year to control lawn weeds or any weeds on your property, especially the perennial weeds, those that come back each year from a root system to haunt us. Thistles, creeping Charlie, creeping Jenny, wild violets. They are busy storing stuff down in their That's a botanical term, stuff. Yeah. They're busy storing stuff down in their root system so that they can survive winter and come back full force next year.
Kind of like a squirrel storing acorns.
Hey, you got it. And so if we apply herbicide to them, they will carry that down quite efficiently too this time of year because material is moving down into the root system quite nice. And so the effective kill will be better even as we kind of approach a little frost. That's kind of a trigger to the weeds. Oh, okay, we better hurry up and store some stuff. So even as we approach fall frost, good time to apply a lawn weed or other type herbicide. So again, what we do now will help benefit next year. You'll have less weed pressure next year, and this is kind of a window of opportunity to get rid of some of those annoying weeds.
With fertilizer, should we be fertilizing with the same fertilizer that we fertilizer in the spring?
Good question.
What should we be looking for in bags of fertilizer? Because there are different kinds.
I'm glad you brought that up because commonly on the shelves at the national chains, the hardware stores, the garden centers, this time of year, you'll see winterizer fertilizer. And it says right there in big bold print, winterizer fertilizer. That was developed for lawns more to the south and to the east of us, where phosphorus and different things in the soil tends to be depleted. Our soils have plenty of phosphorus. Our heavier soils hold on to that material, and we do not need that extra. But because a lot of these fertilizers are made nationally, that's just what gets sent out to the stores, winterizer. We don't need that. It's okay if that's all you can find, but just a regular lawn fertilizer. So I'm going to go to the garden center, and usually, I'll bypass the winterizer, and I can still usually find on the shelf the same lawn fertilizer that I use in the spring, just a regular lawn fertilizer. And so I bypass the winterizer. But again, if that's all you can find, go for that too.
And you're not a big fan of the weed and feed?
No. Because weed and feed, it's not really a preventer. It needs to stick on actively growing weeds to kill them. And because most of our lawns are not a carpet of weeds, we don't need to carpet them with an herbicide. So the feeding part, great, but the herbicide granules in that are kind of a waste of product. So better to fertilize in one operation and spot spray in a second operation.
Well, you were talking about how out east, then maybe some of the lawns aren't as lush as they are here, and maybe if you've had trouble growing in some areas, is this a good time to overseed?
It is, yes. The advantage of seeding in late summer, say August until about September 15th, the soil is warm. After all summer, the soil is warm, and usually the moisture is pretty good, especially this year. And so we have a wonderful window of opportunity. That warm soil will help the grass seed to sprout faster. And as long as it's done before September 15th, and if moisture is adequate, it will germinate and establish well before winter time. So this is really a golden opportunity to start a new lawn area, fill in bare spots, And so good opportunity too. Also, as long as you mentioned that, John, looking for grass seed blends that have at least 50 to 60% Kentucky bluegrass is important too.
That's best in our area and with our soils.
Exactly. Yep. At least 50% or more Kentucky bluegrass varieties.
And then did you say, like, when you're talking about spot spraying weeds, what should we look for in a spray?
Well, kind of depends on the how tough the weeds are. Things like Canada thistle, creeping Charlie, the active ingredient called triclopyr, triclopyr, triclopyr. It doesn't kill lawn grass, but it's quite effective, has a little more teeth for hard to kill weeds. If most of what you have are dandelions and things such as that, they are controlled quite effectively just with simple 2,4-D amine. So the active ingredient on some of those that you'll find in the little fine print on the label, 2,4-D, works quite well on dandelions and things such as that.
All right. Well, let's take a little break. When we come back, let's talk about a little bit about the flowers and what we can do with those.
Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
All right, we're back. We're talking about things to do in the garden around Labor Day, kind of as we transition to maybe some cooler months. And let's talk about the flowers. What are the things that what should be on our list, or our to-do list with the flower parts of our garden?
Well, this weekend I'm going to take geranium cuttings. Now, geraniums you can overwinter the mother plant, the original plant that's growing in your pots and planters. You can overwinter that, and we'll talk about that as we get closer to frost and things. But this is also a good chance to start more geranium plants from geranium cuttings. And I like to do that about this time of year, Labor Day weekend, so I'll be doing that. So the ideal cutting of a geranium is from the tips, the outer tips of the plant. And with a geranium cutting, the ideal cutting is only about 3 inches long and has only 2 leaves. Pinch off the lower ones, and the lower part of that is what you're going to put down in. And I know they can be rooted in water. That's kind of how my mom often did it. But they'll root better if you use just a high-quality potting mix or vermiculite. Those are the little kind of golden flakes. You can buy little bags of vermiculite, or perlite. That's little crunchy white beads. Sometimes I'll blend peat moss and vermiculite. Or if you've got a potting mix that looks like it's high in peat moss and perlite and vermiculite, you can even use that. And so I use recycled 4-packs and fill them with your mix there, and then insert the cuttings, the geranium cuttings. Geranium cuttings do not need rooting powder. In fact, that can actually kind of be a little too much on geranium cuttings. And in about 3 weeks, this time of year, you can put the geranium cuttings in kind of a protected spot. So I'll use a tray of, 4-packs. Sometimes I'll do, 40-some cuttings and put them in a protected spot outside, maybe under the shade of a shrub, somewhere where you can keep it moist, but not too wet. And they'll root really nicely in about 3 weeks. And then you'd be ready to pot those up into about a 4-inch pot or so. So fun time to propagate and get more. A few years ago, we turned 8 geraniums into our current 150 or so. Wow. Just by taking cuttings over a course of a few years.
So that's really kind of an economical way to, if you really want to fill in your garden and have a lot of color. I
should mention too that the patented varieties of geraniums are not to be propagated and sold, because that's part of the licensing. The ones that we propagate are ones that we've had for many years, and the patents are off of them. So I should mention that as well.
All right. So propagating, something to look forward to now, something to do. What about digging and dividing?
Oh, yes. This is the window of opportunity to dig and divide peonies. For example, I've got a peony that's too close to the giant fleece flower that gets humongous, 6-7 feet, and that's lopping over the peony that I planted too close to it. So I need to dig that. It's maybe not big enough to divide yet, But if I wanted more of that one, I could divide it. But digging and dividing peonies this around Labor Day is the golden time. And iris for late August, early September, iris should be dug and divided every 3 or 4 years. The middle of the clump of iris always seems to kind of die out, and the good stuff is around the perimeter. So dig and reset iris. Bleeding heart, same way. Bleeding heart and peonies can stay in the same position, same spot for 100 years. But if they're not blooming, if the center of the clump is dead, you need to move it like I do, then this is the time to do it. Also, the garden centers will have tulips and daffodils and hyacinth bulbs soon. And now, the sooner the better. For planting, because those bulbs aren't just dormant under there. After we plant them, they produce roots, and it's those roots that help the plant to emerge. So already looking towards next spring. See, it's interesting. So we aren't closing up shop. We aren't getting ready to close up shop. What we're doing now is for the benefit of the future, such as planting tulips and daffodils. And getting our peonies and iris in good shape for the coming years also. And rhubarb, kind of similar. We could dig and divide rhubarb this time of year too, or it can wait till next spring also. But if you've got a rhubarb plant that you want to move, September can be a good month for that as well. That's when my mom always moved hers.
Now, if you move rhubarb, how long should you wait until you harvest it?
It should grow all of next year without harvesting, the following year without harvesting. We're letting it build up its energy supply and root system. And then by the 3rd year, same with asparagus.
Okay.
You wait a couple of years and can harvest the 3rd year.
So now we talk about you do the Independence for Gardeners around the July 4th holiday, and one of the things there is that you should stop pulling rhubarb. You want to let the leaves grow. You want to let it store up
re-energize itself.
But you do say that you can take a couple of stalks towards the end of summer.
Because we know that frost is pretty soon gonna plop it all apart.
Is it still time? Can you still get in a couple of stalks? Pull a couple stalks?
Yep, because when frost comes, that's going to shut everything down. After a frost, the leaves are all limp. And, of course, frosted rhubarb you should not use.
Yep.
And so before we have frost, and when they're forecasting frost in maybe a week or so, then a person can go ahead and take advantage of that last harvest of rhubarb.
And then in that time, it's okay to take down as much as you want, or she still leave out some leaves?
I probably wouldn't go over half, just kind of because. But a person could do about half. The other thing is we're thinking kind of towards the Labor Day. Do you put any of your houseplants outside for the summertime? Do you summer any of them outside?
We'll do some.
Yeah, we move some outside, kind of where we have other pots and planters. Sometimes it gives them a little summertime break and things. And so pretty soon we'll need to move those back in, wash them up good, insects. And we need to buy some new house plants. Okay. Just because we need more.
Yep.
And anyway, it's a lot easier to buy them this time of year than in January. It's so much easier to transport them. You don't need to bundle them up and all that. So part of my list here for the upcoming weeks is to get some more houseplants. Well, it's so easy to transport them.
That's a good call to kind of look ahead to that and see that's a particular problem. What about back in the garden? If we're always looking at areas where maybe either we want to take out some lawn and extend the garden, or what should we be doing? Is this a good time to be planning for next year's garden?
It is, because many of us have an area we want to kind of expand, but there's some lawn grass there. And so this is a good time to deal with that. So if you want to expand and there's lawn grass there, you could dig out that grass, but that's kind of a lot of work, and then you kind of have area to fill in. So what works well is to just kill off the grass. Glyphosate, which is the ingredient in original Roundup, that works very well on lawn grass. The results show in about 7 to 10 days, and it's crispy brown. Glyphosate does not have soil carryover, so you can, as soon as the grass is dead, you could work it up. You could even do some planting yet. Fall is a great time to plant trees, shrubs, and perennials. And so you could even get some of that done. Now, if you opt not to use glyphosate, you can accomplish similar things by smothering the grass. It'll take a little longer, with cardboard or black plastic. It may not smother in time this fall for you to plant this fall, because smothering takes longer. But if you start smothering it now, then next spring you would probably be able to do some planting on that area.
All right. Let's take another quick little break. When we come back, we'll start talking about the harvest season.
If you're loving this podcast, be sure to check out our full lineup. From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.
All right, we're back. We're talking about things to do in the garden over Labor Day weekend to kind of prepare for fall. And one of the big things coming up is the harvest. No matter what fruit or vegetable you've got coming up, you're looking to get out there. What should we be doing with the harvest?
Well, I'm excited because some of the apple trees that we planted about 5 years ago are coming into bearing. And the average first bearing age on most apple varieties is kind of 5 to 7 years. So, we aren't going to have bushels of apples, but they're starting to be at their bearing age. Before this, at the young age, we usually would take the apples off like the commercial orchards do. But now they're starting to come into their actual bearing. Not all the types, but some of them. For example, Prairie Magic, a wonderful variety developed in Canada, and they ripen in late August, early September, and so we're starting to harvest those. Other types like Harrelson, Honeycrisp, they need to stay on the tree. Okay, so how do you know if you don't know what type of apple you've got? Maybe you bought a place that had an apple tree on. How do you know when they're ready to pick? Okay, the red color doesn't mean anything because they turn red much earlier than they are ripe. So a couple of things you look at. You look at what's called the background color, the non-red color. Most varieties of apples, that background color goes from green and unripe to more of a creamy color when they're ripe. Okay. Then also the apples will tend to naturally start detaching from the tree. So, many apples start dropping early. It doesn't mean they're ripe. But when you can kind of grab an apple, and maybe some have already fallen that are ripe, grab an apple, and if they start kind of coming off in your hand easily, and then also cut into an apple, ripe apples have shiny blackish brown seeds. If the seeds are still tannish brown, then they aren't quite ready.
Okay.
And if you do know the variety, then you can look up when that average ripening date is. Okay, for example, our Prairie Magic apple ripens the end of August, 1st of September. Those apples are not going to hang on until the 1st of October. Okay, now for the later apples that benefit hanging on the tree, they become sweeter as the temperatures get cooler. Cooler temperatures favor sugar buildup, and so if the Honeycrisp and Harrelson, they aren't ready this time of year. They should remain on until after we get some good cool temperatures. Even some frost is fine. So if you're wondering when to pick the apples, you kind of look for those different things. Or, just grab one, harvest it, taste it, and if it's good, then go ahead with it. And I mean good, some people like a tart apple. I kind of like one that's a blend of sweet and tart. So fun to see the apples doing. Also, I love this time of year for potatoes. Now, we always borrow a few potatoes, dig a few potatoes early to enjoy those nice young potatoes. But most of our potato harvest we leave in the ground until the very end of the growing season, until the vines are totally brown and dry. Right now,
they look like they would be a dead plant, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
that's a good way to describe it.
Well, because we're totally waiting, dead, we're wondering.
And right now, as we're looking at late August, looking to Labor Day, 1st of September, the potato vines are still green. They're starting to look not as vigorous as they did the middle of the season, but so I can see they're starting to approach the end of the season. But I'm going to wait. And there's still some sizing up that they do, and so I'm going to leave them in the ground yet. But it's also fascinating to dig your potatoes. It's like digging buried treasure to see what is actually under there. Have I got some really nice size, good tubers? And so I'm looking forward to that. Now, onions. Onions, at a certain point of the growing season, the nice green tops start to bend over, okay, and just fall over and start laying on the ground. And when the most of them have done that and are laying horizontal on the ground, they can be harvested and then put out in the garage in shallow containers until that green top is totally dry and brown. Now, I prefer in our garden to leave the onions in the ground until the top has dried down to just brown and crisp and crunchy out in the ground. But I do watch. If we're going to get 2 weeks of fall rains and I don't want those onions to start to rot, I will harvest them before that. But if the weather's going to be cool and dry, I leave them in the garden undisturbed until the tops are totally dry and crisp. But again, if they've already fallen over the tops, you can begin harvesting already then. It's always fun to see too. And also, it's fun to see people share photos on Facebook of the big onions. Yeah. And I learned a few years ago that the way to get the biggest onions is to start with plants instead of the little dry sets, the little bulbs, that are sold. But onion plants. You can buy them at garden centers or start your own. They need to be started in February.
Okay. One of the things that we're growing for the first time this year is delicata squash. Oh. And we kind of, it's a learning process. Boy, they grow fast though. But we decided that we would trellis them up.
Oh, yeah. How's that gone?
Well, they're taller than the tomato plants. They are, and they have no.
Do you have many on?
We have, I think, 4 fruits for the one plant.
Awesome.
And so we're waiting to see. One of them's coming along, but we're wondering, at what point should we be?
That's on my bucket list to grow delicata. I have not grown those.
They're delicious.
Grown lots of squash, and I've heard they're delicious. So I'm curious how that's all going to go. Now, on the winter type squash, like buttercup and other butternut. The delicata, other winter type squash. The key to knowing when they're ripe is to leave them on. Don't be in a big rush to harvest them. A couple of ways to tell if squash are ripe and ready. One is the fingernail test. If you can dent the skin in with your fingernail, they're not ready yet. Okay. But if the rind is good and hard and you can't indent it, and it's getting close to it. And many types of squash, such as the buttercup type, or one that I love that's a buttercup type, Uncle David's Dakota dessert squash. We can talk about that next spring. But anyway, that's a wonderful buttercup type. But the buttercup type will develop a kind of an orangey spot, green skin, dark green skin, but they'll develop kind of a spot that turns from yellow to orange when they're ripe. And I don't believe the delicata does that. And of course, butternut kind of stays that tannish color. And so not all develop that ground spot. The other thing is they can be left on. The old saying, when the frost is on the pumpkin, well, that applies to squash too. You can leave the winter type squash in until the vines are totally collapsed by frost. Our first frosts don't hurt them. And then harvest after that. Now, many types of, we call them winter squash, as opposed to, summer squashes are like the zucchini and the yellow crookneck types, but the winter squash are the kind of the storage type squashes. And most of them benefit from curing after you pick them, such as the butternut type, my Uncle David's Dakota dessert squash. Curing means you keep them at a warm spot, garage, maybe in the basement. Keep them at around 70 degrees for up to about a month. And that curing helps the sugar content develop. Some starches kind of change to some sugars. And so curing is important. Now, since I've never grown delicata, I've got to do a little checking because delicata might not benefit from that curing process. Okay. So we need to investigate on that, John. But I'm curious how those do for you. And of course, pumpkins also, they can stay on the vine until the frost is on the pumpkins, then take them for decoration. Very few people grow pumpkins for pumpkin pie anymore.
Right.
Most go into jack-o'-lanterns because the pumpkin that you buy, the canned for pumpkin pies, is actually squash. Yeah, and so I know my mom used to do little kind of, they were called pie pumpkins, but they actually did not make as good a pie as squash does.
One of the other things
we'll still call it pumpkin pie.
One of the other things we're growing this year, you're talking about leaving things in relating to the fall. We're looking forward to leaving them in, but carrots.
Oh, yes.
How are your carrots coming?
I think they're doing well.
Yep.
I think they're doing well. We had thinned them out, and so that each could develop. And the tops look pretty good. We haven't sampled any yet, but as the temperatures get cooler, both the air temperatures and the soil temperature gets cooler, the starches in the carrots do convert to sugar. So carrots will get sweeter as the temperatures. And so I usually wait until the bitter end to harvest the carrots. Air frost is not going to harm the carrots, but I dig ours before the soil starts to freeze, and that usually happens the first part of November. So I will oftentimes leave our carrots in the ground until some point in October. But I try to time it also so that if we get some heavy rain, and in our gooey Fargo clay soil, if that soil is too wet when you dig carrots, they are gooey and hard to clean. So I try to time it that if we are going to get some rains, prolonged rains, I try to get the carrots dug before that happens.
Do you want to let the carrots, is that another thing that you want to let cure, kind of like the onions? You want to let them dry out, or do you want to get those into the fridge?
Into the fridge, as soon as possible. So carrots, you bring up an interesting point, John, about storage. Onions want a dry storage. Dry storage, too. Yep, squash too, dry type storage. Potatoes want a moist, kind of like a potato cellar. They want temperatures of about 40 degrees and more of a moisty type, but kind of like the old-fashioned root cellar down in a dank basement. And carrots also want that moisture, cool moist. Carrots store well in a fridge. Many people put them in an old fridge in the garage, because they, if you got a lot of carrots, they can take up pretty good space. So refrigerated, like in cellophane bags in which a little bit of holes are poked, they'll keep very well in a refrigerator. Some people used to store their carrots like in down root cellar type, 40 degrees, but pack them in sand and things like that. If the sand is too moist, they rot. Down in our root cellar, we pack them in bins and then put plastic over the top of that so it stays cool and moist.
All right. Well, if people have questions for you about whatever they're growing, but whatever is coming up in their calendar year as far as things to do, or if they just want to, like you said, share pictures of their successes or what they've learned this year, what's the best way to reach you?
Email me, donald.kinsler, KINZLER, @ndsu.edu. And it's fun. This has been fun, John, talking about, I love this time of year. Many of the flowers are still at peak, the annual flowers and things look good, but we're looking forward to harvesting on things. But I'm excited because this conversation has got me thinking about next year already and how we can do things this fall to make next year even better.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, and I think also let's encourage people to send in pictures of their success. Let's have a success show. Let's have a show where we just talked about what really worked well for us this year, and we'll try to share pictures and we can share them on our Instagram account.
We'll do it.
All right, Don, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone, for listening.